I want to apologize a little bit because I can't disguise the fact that I am enraged right now, furious at what has just been done. The most sacred citadel of liberal democracy, a symbol of the peaceful transition of power, of debate, not violence, of order, not chaos, has been invaded, assaulted, and sacked by a mob that was directly commanded by the President of the United States, who told this crowd to go to the Capitol and be wild, who told them that the opposition was so tough that they couldn't afford to be weak. And as is often the case, was greeted by the unbelievable incompetence from those entrusted with the security of the Capitol building. I don't think this could have happened in any other Western democracy. I think if the Houses of Parliament had been stormed by a mob, the United Kingdom would be in complete crisis. But I don't think those liberal democracies are as failed and as corrupt and as incompetent as the one we are unfortunately doomed to live in. I'm angry because it has been absolutely clear from the minute this monster came down that escalator that this was his intent, to undo American democracy. He has never said he would concede. He did not concede in advance of the 2016 election. In fact, he insisted that he would not honor the result if he didn't win. We've known this all the time. We have had a wannabe tyrant vandalizing every institution in our democracy, poisoning our entire country, and bringing the reputation of the United States down to the level of a banana republic. Yes, I love this country. I love the principles on which it has been built. But this man has destroyed them, and he has done so with the willing, active, enthusiastic support of an entire political party. He turned it into a cult. He fed them after 60 lawsuits, were perfectly legitimate to question the results of an election, perfectly legitimate to take election results to courts, to present evidence of fraud or other irregularities, as they are euphemistically calling it. Not legitimate after that whole process to invoke violence. And not just on any day, on the day the Congress would certify the results of the election. This was an attempted attack on the very core of our democracy. I'm going to read something I wrote not that long ago, but those of you who've read my stuff for the last few years know this is what I've been saying from the beginning. It's what I said as early as February 2016. This man is a tyrant. It doesn't mean that he has effectively created a tyranny, but he has spent every second of every day attempting to do so. He was and always has been an absurd as well as disgusting human being. But that's what tyrants are. And an attempt by a president to advance his own personal rule over every other principle in our Constitution has also been greeted by some hysteria on the far left, yes, and with great enthusiasm on so much of the right, yes. But it is those in the middle, those who have been close to him, those who are around this town and knew what he was, know what he still is, and still dismissed, minimized, looked away, and attempted to persuade us that this emergency in American democracy, which has now been going on for 5 years, was not an emergency at all, that everything was fine, that our system was resilient, that it would continue without a hitch. These are absolutely classic phenomena associated with the rise of tyrants. Read Aristotle on tyranny. Read Plato on tyranny. Read Shakespeare on tyranny. I wrote a while back about the parallels between Donald Trump and Richard III. And this is what I wrote, and forgive me for repeating it. I did this before the election, when Barton Gellman's piece came out, that people dismissed at the time as fantastical and paranoid, every single bit of which has been proven correct. Here's the piece. Denial, avoidance, distraction, willful ignorance, these are all essential to enabling a tyrant's rise. And keeping this pattern going is Richard III's profound grasp of the power of shock. He does and says the unexpected and unthinkable in order to stun his opponents into a kind of dazed passivity. It's this capacity to keep you on your heels, to keep disorienting you with the unacceptable, which is then somehow accepted, that marks a tyrant's relentless drive. He does this by instinct. He craves chaos, lies, suspense, surprises, not because he's a genius, but because stability threatens his psyche. He cannot rest. He is not in control of himself. This is what we've been dealing with in the figure of Donald Trump now for 5 years, and it is absurd to believe that a duly conducted election is going to end it. I know, I'm hysterical and over the top and a victim of Trump derangement syndrome. Trump is simply too incompetent and too lazy to be an actual tyrant. I'm constantly scolded. He's just baiting me again, and so on. But what I think this otherwise salient critique misses is that tyranny is not, in its essence, about the authoritarian administrative skills required to run a country effectively for a long time. Tyrants, after all, are often terrible at this. It's rather about a mindset, as the ancient philosophers understood, with obvious political consequences. It's a pathology. It requires no expertise in anything other than itself. You need competence if you want to run an effective government or plan a regular campaign or master policy with a view to persuading people or hold power for the sake of something else. You need competence to create and sustain something. But you do not need much competence to destroy things. You just need the will. And this is what tyrants do. They destroy things. Richard III ruled for 2 short years, ending in his own death in battle and a ruined country. This is Trump's threat. Not the construction of a viable one-party state, but the destruction of practices, norms, civility, laws, customs, and procedures that constitute liberal democracy's non-zero-sum genius. He doesn't need to be competent to destroy our system of government. He merely needs to be himself, an out-of-control, trust-free, malignant narcissist with inexhaustible resources of psychic compulsion in a pluralist system designed for the opposite. All you need is an insatiable, pathological drive to avoid any constraint on your own behavior and the demagogic genius to carry a critical mass of people with you. And our system, designed as the antidote to tyranny, is soon unspooling into incoherence, deadlock, and collapse. Here is how I ended this piece. It fills me with inexpressible rage that we have been brought to this. But there is no way out now other than through. This was always going to be the moment of maximal danger. And we cannot lose our focus now. I stand by every single word of that. It was obvious, absolutely obvious, who this man was and what he intended to do. He has done it all. He has destroyed precedents, norms, procedures. He has physically urged a mob to shut down democratic government. And here's the kicker. In all of this, he is supported, according to current polls, by 80% of Republicans, or somewhere in that region. We'll find out as this news sinks in exactly what that is. But more important, 147 members of Congress voted to overturn a Democratic result. Never happened. Any other liberal democracy in the West. Never happened here. The Republican Party is a cult dedicated to its own rule and nothing else. This is also a president who currently has the support and approval of 42% of the country, or somewhere around 40% of the country. This behavior has not affected his popularity in the slightest. It has not in the slightest dented the belief of the vast majority of members of one party that what just happened was a massive landslide for Trump that was twisted fraudulently into a victory for Biden. I don't know of any circumstance in which a liberal democracy is in more peril than this. So on that cheerful note, and again, I apologize. I'm enraged. I love this country. I believe in it. I believe in its system. I believe in its institutions. I believe that capital is a civil, sacred site that has been pillaged by these morons, fools, and fanatics. There we go. I got it off my chest.